Introducing Built to Last, a new podcast by American Express. I'm Elaine Welteroth, and I'm excited to host the debut season where we will be deep diving into the stories, history, and continued legacy of small businesses that shape American culture. Through these important conversations, we'll hear how the Black business leaders of our past have inspired today's Black-owned small businesses and communities. Join us for the debut season of Built to Last on Spotify, Apple, YouTube, or wherever you get your favorite podcasts.
Empire.
Hello and welcome to my podcast, sponsored by Lono Coffee. Visit lonocoffee.com, use promo code COFFEE2020 for a discount. Today, I talk with ESPN's David Newton about Ron Rivera and facing his former team, the Carolina Panthers. What do the people in Carolina still think about Rivera? We'll get some information on some of the other Panthers, Teddy Bridgewater, Christian McCaffrey. Plus, David provides insight into Marty Hurney, who was fired as the Panthers GM this week, but who, as we all know, has strong ties to Ron Rivera. Really good stuff from David as usual. And I answered your questions for a mailbag, heavy on Dwayne Haskins and the GM situation. You can follow David on Twitter at DNewtonESPN. You can read my work on ESPN.com. I look forward to getting back to writing about games. Before I share my conversation with David, I wanted to do the mailbag first. Not calling it a therapy session. They'd won 4 in a row. It's not a Thursday. But this is kind of a therapy session given some of the stuff that's happened. So let's get to it. One thing I do want to say, I'm not ignoring the Daniel Snyder ownership situation, but I didn't get any question on that. It's very complicated. I've written about it. You can read it on ESPN.com. Anyway, let's get to the questions. From TJ, wants to know, after what appears to be a second COVID violation and Ron's drive to culture change, can we now move on from Dwayne Haskins? Can we now question his maturity? Well, TJ, many have been doing so for a while in terms of questioning the maturity. I want to stress, nobody said he's a bad kid. They have always just wanted him to take a more mature, professional approach. 2 staffs now have wanted to do that. As a few people at the organization and some who have left have told me, it's not just the 2 head coaches who have had questioned him. It's all the others who have worked with him. They were talking about a number of coaches that have wanted him to be this way. They've always wanted to do more preparation. Even now, while I'm told he's doing more, it's at maybe 70% of the level they'd like it to be. Better, but not there. And it will take a long time for it to happen with him once he does get to that point. Having a party with strippers is not a strike against a young man, especially as a young man who's a professional football player, professional athlete, or whatever. Doing it in a setting where you're not wearing a mask in a pandemic while in a playoff push is not a good look. If this were a one-off, that would be one thing, but they'll lump it in with other transgressions. Trust me, a lot of people over there were upset and disappointed, and one person told me, and sad. The earlier fine for violating COVID protocol came when he made a reservation for a family friend at the team hotel the night before a game. There was a scene in the locker room after the Baltimore game where numerous people said he was basically celebrating the fact that he threw for more than 300 yards. Then you have this situation. It all adds up. I also know there's some people there who I'm going to guess after all this stuff, who are going to probably feel that it's probably best for him to get out of this area and not be surrounded by all these family and friends and maybe be able to get into better habits somewhere else. Again, not a bad kid. I don't think he's doing anything wrong or illegal out there. It's just that they want him to be more mature, and that's something they've said for a while. I don't like saying this stuff because I like the kid, but it is what you hear, and that's what I want to tell you. All right, next one. From Patrick Gallagher, said, John, isn't it appropriate to cut Haskins or at a minimum suspend him for the season for an immature breach of COVID protocol? I get the impression that the kid doesn't get it, doesn't understand responsibility of QB and a professional. Well, I kind of answered some of this before, but my understanding is that as of now, they know they might need him against Carolina. I was told there's some optimism regarding Alex Smith and with the strain right calf, but we really won't know that until later in the week. If he practices and then how his calf responds after he does. I do think if Smith and Kyle Allen were healthy and this had happened, then Haskins would be gone or at the least suspended. I also think this will be the end for him in Washington. He's a captain. And while I'm sure he's not the only player to have gone out and put themselves in a bad situation, he is supposed to be a leader. He's playing a premium position in, again, playoff push. Contrast what we've learned about him with what we know about Chase Young. I was told after the Detroit game, where remember he had that 15-yard unsportsmanlike conduct penalty that led to the game-winning field goal. Before he spoke to the media, somebody with the team tried to make him feel better by reminding him how he was going to have a long career. Young snapped. He got pissed and yelled that he was sick of people saying that to him. And his comment was, "We lost." He started banging the wall. That's the kind of guy you need to build around. Cortez Watkins wants to know, do you think if they bring in the former Panthers GM, Marty Hurney, that there's a chance Kyle Smith will still want to stay on as VP of player personnel? When did the rift between him and Ron develop? And he said, sorry, I know it's two questions. That's fine, Cortez. It all is the same stuff. It's kind of the same answer. All right, anyway, I don't think he'd want to stay on. And again, a lot of that's going to depend on, is there somewhere else to go to? If he doesn't have anything else to go to, he'll make it work. I mean, based on what people have told me about Kyle and my limited dealings with him, I don't think that I think he could make that work. I don't think that'd be an ideal situation where he'd want to definitely stay. Doesn't mean to leave, because again, you have to have somewhere to land. But if there's a chance to leave, yeah, I think that would be the option. Dave and I are going to discuss this in a minute about Marty Hurney, and based on what he says, it wouldn't be surprising to see Marty Hurney join the team. But one thing I was told to keep in mind, in Carolina, he was not working under Rivera. Here, he would be. Would he be okay with that? Also, Rob Rogers, who was basically his assistant as a cap guy, was an assistant cap guy in Carolina, is now the main one here, has more power than he did with Carolina. Would Hurney be okay with that? And would Rogers be okay with that? Agents, when it was in Carolina, agents knew that they could call Hurney to get deals done. Multiple people have told me that. So he was the one doing deals. Right now, it'd be up to Rogers. And so I think that's an interesting dynamic to add to this. I'm not saying it can or won't happen, and the speculation makes sense. And again, David will lay out some reasons why maybe it would happen. But I am saying there are some caveats attached to it. So don't assume it's going to happen, even though his name will come up. As for the rift, I don't think there is a rift. I said this last week, and I'll say it again. I've heard that they get along, and the process worked well this offseason. I think one of the things that's been difficult is that I don't think, it's hard in the building because Rivera missed a lot of time when he was out getting cancer treatments. And then, now it's hard to really be around him because they're limiting exposure and being in groups and all that. So I don't know how much they've really dealt with one another throughout the season, but I have never gotten the sense that there's really a rift. And again, I think they get along well. I do believe it's clear that Rivera likes guys around him that he's comfortable with and has known for a long time. That's why there are 12 coaches from Carolina on this staff. I do wonder if Smith being a holdover from previous regimes is an issue. I don't know that, but I do wonder, and I think other people wonder that too, because this is I think a lot of people are confused by what's going on. He's also relatively young for the position, so there's some who wonder if Rivera maybe would like to have someone come in, almost mentor him for a couple years. Keep in mind, though, and I said this last week, Smith's dad is former GM A.J. Smith. That's his mentor. So if they don't promote Smith or bring someone else in above him, then yes, I could see him leaving. Not a guarantee, but I certainly think that there would be some pursuing of other jobs. Jeff Weinbarger wants to know, do QBs get called out in the film sessions for hitting their checkdowns rather than an open receiver on another route? From an outsider, this seems to be nothing but a checkdown offense. Rarely is a pass thrown over 15 to 20 yards. All right, Jeff. Yes, if there are plays they're not seeing downfield, then absolutely they will, because sometimes you ask coaches about it and say, yeah, he's got to see this, he's got to see that. I know that stuff gets said in meetings. So yeah, it does get talked about. A lot of that's a mindset. Some guys want to drive the ball. Others are going to be the old take a profit philosophy. You can see missed opportunities when you rewatch the games on the All-22. It's sometimes impossible to get a feel for this when just watching the TV broadcast. It's very frustrating. I know against Pittsburgh, for example, Alex Smith checked down a lot, but when we rewatched the game, there wasn't anything he was really passing up. Maybe one or two plays, but it wasn't more than that. Sunday, they wanted Haskins to dump off on the play where he threw his second pick. That would have been the smart throw. But there were a couple times Sunday as well where if Haskins had been just a bit more patient, he would have had a receiver breaking inside for a 15, 20-yard gain off a good throw, of course. So yeah, there is a balance. I also think, like in Alex Smith's case, first of all, he's been a guy who's thrown underneath a lot throughout his career. I also think you're operating behind a line where Cornelius Lucas, Wes Schweitzer, it's not going to be the strongest left side of a line in the NFL. So I think sometimes by getting rid of the ball, you're also protecting the quarterback and moving the chains. So there is but again, there is a balance there, and I'm not saying it's always the right way. I do think, though, in one case it's a mindset, and another one I think it's got to be with Haskins. I think sometimes he's got to trust and be more patient and trust what he sees. Here's a little stat for you, though, Jeff. Washington ranks 24th in the number of pass attempts of throws 15 yards or more through the air. They rank 28th in completion percentage on those throws. That's not good. All right, Strick9 wants to know, how likely do you think it is that they go one more year with the same QB room if Alex wants to continue? Very unlikely? That's a question mark. Well, I think it's highly doubt that they go with the same QB room, and I didn't think that even before this Dwayne Haskins situation developed. We can all admire Alex Smith, and we all know they need more help on offense around him or whomever. Maybe after a year and going in the offseason, he can elevate his game a bit. I love what he adds from a leadership standpoint, but I definitely think they will probably, I would definitely see if you could upgrade with a veteran. If not, then you're going to look in the draft, and then maybe you'd want him around in that situation. And I don't know if Alex Smith is going to want to come back or not. It may be you get to the point where if they end up winning a division title, he might just say, listen, that's a wrap. This is a great ending for me, and I'm ready to go off now. I proved a point. I don't know. I have a feeling that this team is going to see this division as highly winnable for the foreseeable future. Would you entrust a rookie with that or try to go pursue another veteran? If they move on from Smith. Of course, that's a general thought because we don't even know who's going to be available or what it would cost. But the point is, I don't see any way this room is the same. Luke Erfman wants to know, and this is the last one, folks, is there concern with all the talent on the D-line to afford all of them in the coming years? Well, hi, Luke. Concern, I can't say I've had those conversations with the right people just yet, but I would definitely say everybody knows the situation. To help, I would give Jonathan Allen an extension this offseason, even though they could keep him around in an option year. And I do believe I definitely believe there are going to be talks about an extension based on what I know. When will that happen? I don't know. Will they get it done? I don't know. But I would be shocked if, based on what I know, that they don't start negotiations for an extension this offseason. I suppose the good thing is that they're not all up at the same time, so the fact that they were all first-round picks helps in this case. If one of them had been a lower-round pick, they might be up at the same time, and I'm talking about the top 4 guys. That said, Tim Settle was a 5th-round pick and is capable of starting for a lot of teams. He's up after 2021. That's also when Daron Payne is up, though they would have the chance to put an option year with him. It's why it's not out of the question they could trade one of them, or why they might need to let Ryan Kerrigan walk after the season and develop younger and cheaper ends behind Sweat and Young. It will be a situation worth watching. And again, with Kerrigan's situation, I don't know what's going to happen there. But, at one point this year, it certainly looked like he would be gone. It will be a situation worth watching because this is an absolute strength of the team. Washington's cap situation is good moving forward, but that would be a lot to invest in one position. Well, that's it from me. After this break, I'll be back with ESPN's David Newton. Would Marty Hurney be a good GM in Washington?
Hey there. The holidays are here, so it's good to know Kroger can save you some time with free pickup on all your fresh favorites. Whether your traditions call for a hearty helping of juicy ham, ample apple pie, or Aunt Sue's legendary twice-stuffed stuffing, Kroger has got you covered. So order for free pickup at Kroger.com or the app and get more time to get your holiday on when you grab your groceries curbside. Kroger, fresh for everyone. Free pickup on orders of $35 or more. Restrictions may apply.
It is almost that time when you put your name in a grid and hope that your box hits the final score. But you don't have to wait until February to start winning. With Boxes, you can play box pools every day for every game. Boxes is completely free to play, and you can win big. Washington football fans who download the app from the App Store or go to boxes.com, that's BOXIZ.com, and use our code KIME20 can enter our contest where the lucky winner with the final score of the Carolina-Washington game will receive $100. We'll have new games every week and incredible prizes in the playoffs and for the big game that will include tickets to games next year when fans can finally return in 2021. So go to boxes.com for more information or download the app now. BOXIZ. Use the code KIME20 when you sign up and when you enter our contest for the Washington-Carolina game. It's free for you and your friends to get in and win. Boxes, it's anyone's game. Now I welcome back David Newton. David, I think you've been on the show as much as anybody over the last year. I owe you you a coffee drinker?
I like coffee. I like beer. I'll drink whatever you give me.
Right. Well, I'll send you some Low-No Coffee. They're one of our sponsors. You'll enjoy it, and we'll get you taken care of. How's that?
That sounds good.
But I do appreciate you coming on because you've got a lot of insight into Ron Rivera, and obviously the Washington plays the Panthers this week. Let's start with Rivera because this is a big game, and he tried to downplay it a little bit, saying they have bigger things to worry about. But you know what he meant there. What does this mean? What do you think this game means to him, first of all?
Well, I believe it is important to him because Charlotte was where he got his first chance to be a head coach. This is where he thought he would finish his career. I mean, his plan, he said early in his career that he wanted to coach, another 10 years or so and then retire and enjoy retirement because a lot of coaches don't do that. And Ron, I think, was pretty committed to that. So when he got fired, I think that re-energized him to a way and got him fired up and wanted to reprove himself all over again. But the outpouring of support he got when he went through the treatment for cancer, to the support he had throughout his career. I mean, the Super Bowl year, the year that his house caught on fire. That was in 2000. Was it 14? I think when they were getting ready for the playoff run there, when they had a season similar to what you guys are having there, where they won a division with a losing record, and his house caught on fire, and so people were offering to let him live with them, and his family, because he had to move out of his house for a while. And that's one story after another. I mean, he really endeared himself to this community, to the city, and I think the Carolinas in general.
Are you surprised? Listen, this is still a 6-8 team, so I don't want to oversell where they're at, but where they came from, 3-13, all the mess in the offseason, 2-7. Any surprised you that he has them where they're at?
Not at all, because I mean, the division is really kind of messed up anyway, kind of like it was in the South back in 2014. I mean, nobody had a winning record, and Ron kept the team motivated by talking about how we're still relevant. We're still a team that can make the playoffs, and when they did, they actually won a game. I mean, they beat Arizona in the playoffs and went out. I thought it played Seattle a decent game, but that was just a really good Seattle team, and it was just too tough to think they would win out there. But I think that experience taught him a lot about himself, about just staying focused on one game at a time. I mean, you hear coaches preach about one game at a time all the time, but when you're in a situation like this, they really do matter, every single one. I mean, that tie Philadelphia had, that's where Carolina was. That tie was the difference between them, making the playoffs and winning the division and not making it. So every snap, everything is important. And he learned a lot that year. So I'm not surprised at all. I think with the quarterback situation, maybe that's a little bit surprising because you've been so unstable there, at least at Carolina. When they were losing, they had Cam Newton, and he was, headed the next year to be an MVP of the league. So I think that's the biggest difference in how he's kind of held that position together.
How is he perceived in Carolina these days?
Again, I think he was loved by a lot of people. When he was fired, there was a lot of people that felt like he probably, should have been given a chance to continue because injuries. And he said it best when he left. He said it all started with the injuries of the quarterback because when Cam Newton was hurt in 2018, I mean, they were 6-2 midway point of the season. Cam's playing better than his MVP season, and then it just went downhill from there and never got back, and they just never had a star quarterback. So a lot of that had to do with it. He went through the coaching change. He went through the general manager change. I mean, really, he had Marty Hurney was there. He was fired. He was back there. Dave Gettleman, a couple of drafts Gettleman had, while Gettleman played a big role in getting the Panthers to the Super Bowl and kind of finishing what Marty had started. He had a couple of bad drafts that left him in a bad situation. So, and some people I'm sure thought, hey, it's time for him to move on. 9 years, you kind of played out your role here, and it's time to go see what you can do somewhere else and see what somebody else can do in here. But I think Ron probably was one of the most liked coaches, if not the most liked they've ever had here.
Wow. And one of the things that I think is there are a couple of things that jumped out here, and we talked about this on the Zoom video that's going to be on the site, but transparency, open door policy. I'm assuming that doesn't surprise you that has mattered to players here.
Not at all. I hope I get the date right. I think it was 2013. They were 1-3. Lots of rumors going around about him fired. It may have been the next year, but anyway, Ron just felt like there was a disconnect between himself and the locker room, and so he actually moved out of his, nice big office upstairs and took a small, pretty, almost like closet-like little office downstairs next to the locker room, and started spending a lot of time in there. And players, that open door policy, I'm sure he's got there, they would feel free to walk in and talk to him, and they'd see him roaming through the locker room. We'd see him during our open locker room period roaming through there and talking to players. And he really built a relationship with players that I think played a big role in turning that team around and making the playoffs and going on that run of 3 straight NFC South titles.
And there are definitely examples from here of players taking advantage of the open door policy, going to talk to him about whatever issue they might have. And I think feeling better after they come out. And I think they do genuinely like playing for him. And, so I think that's absolutely helped this franchise. What do you think his legacy is there?
Probably Cam Newton and getting to the Super Bowl. That 2015 season was magical, and they were 15-1 in the regular season. Steamrolled through the playoffs, and Cam the MVP. It was, they shouldn't have lost the one game they lost. It was literally the week around this time around Christmas, and Cam had just had his girlfriend had a baby, and I think they were feeling a little full of themselves, and went to Atlanta and lost. But Ron regathered everybody, got them focused, ready for the playoffs, and they just didn't play well in the Super Bowl. Cam didn't play well there, but I think those are Cam's going to be a guy he's going to be connected to, bringing him into the league, and I just think the community service too that he always did, not just him but his players were really active in the community. Ron was with the animal dogs. He loved dogs, and probably he's still got a couple of dogs that he probably brought from Charlotte to there, and he was just real involved. He got out amongst the people, and I think that kind of endeared him to a lot of people. And again, winning and making the playoffs and making the Super Bowl makes you even more popular.
And then, because he did have a few losing seasons in there as well. And, how much do you think that was on him or the situation? You brought the quarterback with Cam, because usually it's going to come back to that for most coaches. But, how did you process his, there was, I think it was 4 winning seasons or 4 playoffs. Was it 3 or 4 winning seasons? I forget right off the top of my head. So how do you process that, just the tenure in general from a on-field standpoint?
Well, remember, he took over a team in 2011 that was dreadful. Right. Dreadful. And he started a rookie quarterback in Cam Newton right off the bat. They committed to him, and they won, 6 games that year, then 7 games the next year. What they really did, though, was at the end of each of those years, they played really well. His December record was really impressive those first 4 or 5 years. And so they built some confidence for the next year. And then again, that 2013 season when things took off. So, they didn't have the winning records at the end. And you can blame a little bit for not having a better backup quarterback. But, who's really got not many teams have that kind of quarterback could carry you that far. And the fact that they actually in 2019 actually went on a 5-game winning streak with Kyle Allen, which
that was pretty good.
That blew us all away. So I think he did what he could with what he had at that point. But you got to remember, he lost a lot of really good coaches. He lost 2 different. Sean McDermott. You see what he's doing in Buffalo, and then the next year he lost his defensive coordinator for a 2nd straight year, and those people took a few people away from his staff. And like any good team, when you start picking away at that staff, you're going to weaken it.
And it's funny because I do remember talking to him that I think he felt better when he started going back and calling plays in the defense after he lost Steve Wilkes, because he felt like he had Wilkes and the McDermott he could trust. And just, I think he got away from some of that. But speaking of ex-Panthers who are free and maybe might go somewhere else, Marty Hurney just became free. What do you think? What was their relationship like? And could you foresee him maybe coming to Washington eventually?
Well, Marty's never actually admitted to this on the record, but there are those that will tell you that he pretty much fell on the sword back in 2012, because I think Jerry Richmond was pretty fed up. They'd had that losing year, the first year under him, and they started off really bad in 2012. And Marty Marty, it go down, he was fired, but I think he kind of took the sword and said, here, I'll step away because I really believe in Ron and see where we can get going there. And Ron was probably the happiest person when they brought him back. That was, it's unusual to have a general manager get fired and then be brought back after you've gone to a Super Bowl. So I think that showed the kind of confidence and relationship. They had a really good working relationship. They were on the same page about their philosophy and what they wanted to do. It's really interesting here. David Tepper kind of referred to Marty as the old school. Well, I think Marty's been a great evaluator. I mean, you look at his first round picks, they're pretty strong and helped the Panthers get to where they were as far as 2015, big time. And so I think if he were to go there, it would not surprise me at all because I think they like each other that much. And I think that would be a really good working relationship where it would almost be like having co-general managers in a lot of ways.
And I was going to ask you too, guys, and that's what you never know what somebody's relationship is, especially in those situations, but you felt like they got along pretty well.
Oh gosh. Yeah. I mean, Ron, he probably would, I guess Marty might've been like his second father in a lot of ways, just the way they treated each other. I mean, it was really a respect on both sides for each other and what they could do. I mean, how many GMs you ever know that would just pretty much take the sword for the head coach? Marty believed in Ron that much. And I think in the end, when he came back, Ron believed in Marty that much.
And obviously Marty used to be one of us, a sports writer. I mean, it's still kind of funny to think where he was and where he went to. And I've never met him. I don't know him. But if Washington goes out and hires him, would you think that's a good move? No,
you build a team through the draft. I know David Tepper thinks they need a guy that's going to be stronger with data and analytics, but talent's what wins games. And the other stuff's pretty cool, but you have a GM that's going to bring in and not make huge mistakes in the draft. You can build a pretty strong roster, and I think that Marty Hurney would do that. I think he learned a lot after he stepped away from the game for about 4 or 5 years, watching Dave Gettleman and some of the things he did. And, Marty will be the first to say, I was too loyal to some of my players and gave people like D'Angelo Williams and Jonathan Stewart and those guys big contracts that he probably shouldn't have, that got him in a really bad situation financially against the cap. So he learned a lot, and I thought when he came back, he did a pretty good job of reestablishing things. You look at the current roster, I mean, I know a lot of Rivera players are gone now, but, some of the stars like Christian McCaffrey and DJ Moore and, gosh, I mean, just down the line, a lot of the offensive linemen, Shaq Thompson, their linebacker, they're all still here, and those were all draft picks by Marty Hurney.
And in Washington has actually done a good job with the draft. So their scouting staff has been pretty good. So I'll be curious to see and I'm pretty sure they're going to hire a GM. So at some point, I think something's going to happen. Yeah. And Ron, as you know, with Ron Rivera, seems to be somebody who wants people he can trust. I think there's like 12 ex-Panther coaches on this staff.
Exactly. Why not bring the GM too? And remember, look at Marty's tree. It's not big, but Brandon Beane is at Buffalo right now. Look at what he's done at Buffalo. That's been impressive. A lot of people laugh and say, why did we let Brandon Beane get away? And why didn't we just hire him? Well, Marty's the guy that Brandon learned under. So, I think Marty's a pretty bright guy. And he gives some credibility to us as sports writers. In fact, you can go from sports writers to a GM, and he helped build 2 rosters that made it to Super Bowls. Don't forget that the 2003 team that went to Super Bowl, he basically built that one himself, and the one that went in 2015. While he wasn't here then, he was the guy that laid the foundation, and most of the key players in that season came from his drafts or pickups.
That's pretty impressive. Let's get a couple updates on some of the Panthers right now. A couple quick hitters. Christian McCaffrey. Okay. We're going to see him Sunday.
Good question.
You want to know that too.
I think he'll probably play. We'll still wait and see how he makes it through practices, because we thought he would play 3 weeks ago, and then his quad that he had actually tweaked during the bye week when he was just working out to come back, that was aggravated. So I think he'll play. He wants to play. Matt Rule wants to win some games, and he gives him the best chance.
What's Teddy Bridgewater been like this year as far as a player? I mean, it looks like there's some ups, some downs.
He's a real likable guy. I mean, to go from Cam Newton to him has been pretty drastic, to be honest. But there's He does a lot of things really well. His leadership is unbelievable. I think he plays hard. He's probably underrated as a running quarterback a little bit because he's made some spectacular runs at times this year. But what he hasn't done is found a way to win games at the end. He's 0-8 in games this year where he's had the ball in his hands in his final drive with a chance to win or tie. And ultimately, that's what quarterbacks are going to be judged on, how they bring a team back and win into clutch situations. And you go back through history from Elway to Montana, all the greats. They won games like that in the final minutes. So he hasn't done that. So I think that they're probably looking at, hey, we'll give him another chance to start out next season. But if we're in the top 5 in the draft, which they're probably going to be, we'll probably take a quarterback.
Brian Burns, and he's a guy that I really coming out of the draft a couple years ago. And I remember we had a redraft for ESPN, and I think I ended up taking Brian Burns, and you took Montez Sweat. I think we're both doing okay there. So what's Burns been like? His numbers are really good.
They are, and I mean he was drafted to be a 3-4 outside linebacker by Ron, and Matt Rule came in, and Phil Snow, the defensive coordinator, switched over to the 4-3. He's played a lot of 3-4-4-3 and even 3-3-5 that you'll probably see a lot to try to confuse them. And Brian's a guy that can play both spots and do it well. He's not going to be a guy like Julius Peppers that could just line up and dominate you on the end. But he's got so much more quickness, and his bendability is unbelievable. And he thinks he's Spider-Man, and his Spidey moves are pretty impressive. And so, if they do get to your quarterback, just watch him after the sack. Because watching he looks like Spider-Man. I mean, it's really impressive.
And then, Matt Rule's first year, and you brought up the close losses, and then Ron Rivera brought up that too. And I look at these teams and the records, they've both fallen behind by double digits a lot. These guys have been able to get back and win a few of those games. Carolina has not. What is Rule's influence and why? And you brought up Teddy, but what are some of the other reasons why they can't close as a team?
They've made some I have to blame some of it on coaching. I mean, I think the Minnesota game, they weren't really sure the ball was back in play, and they didn't get to play into Teddy Bridgewater down near the goal line in time. And Teddy didn't have time to look at the defense. He says he would have audible out of that play, and it was still wide open. He missed him, but he had to rush it. Everything was rushed to the line. So that was an example. I disagreed with the call last week. I know Matt Rule said he doesn't want his quarterback reaching over the top there, but the way they run it, they run the ball pretty well. And, Mike Davis had really been strong running it. So I thought they probably should have given him at least one shot down there at the goal line instead of doing that on first down. And they just had a few other game mismanagement situations down there. And Teddy is blamed too. He's thrown a couple interceptions, been under duress too. So been not the same thing every week. That's been what's different. I remember Ron, I'm thinking back to which season it was, but they had the same situation where it might have been 2012 or 13 where they had a lot of close games that they just couldn't pull out. And I remember he came in thinking that's all going to even out, and I think it did the next year.
Well, I think Washington fans will be happy if it evens out next year for the Panthers as well, and not Sunday, because this team has a chance to win the division. I think they'd like to celebrate that. David, thanks a lot for coming on. Insight is always great. Thank you very much.
Appreciate it, John.
Support for this podcast comes from Neutrogena Hydro Boost. Does your day last all day? Keep your skin dewy, soft, and smooth all day with Neutrogena Hydro Boost. The new hyaluronic acid serum quenches skin with 2 sizes of hyaluronic acid, dermatologist-recommended glycerin, vitamin B5, and kiwi extract. Just apply in the morning for weightless, fragrance-free hydration that reaches 9 layers of skin and then seals it in for 24 hours. Or pair it with Neutrogena Hydro Boost Water Gel for 4 times the hydrating power. De-stress, rehydrate with premium skincare at home and on your schedule. Neutrogena Hydro Boost Hyaluronic Acid Serum. Stay dewy, soft, and drenched in hydration. Learn more at Neutrogena.com.
You've heard me talking about Lone Oak Coffee for a couple months now. Let me tell you a little bit about who they are and what they're about. Lone Oak Coffee is based in the Shenandoah Valley, just a nice bunch of people who are open for business during this trying time. Just look at their website, loneoakcoffee.com, and what do they highlight? Their core values of quality, family, transparency. They work with co-op farmers from all over the world to source their beans. They also support small farmers to find the right beans. During this pandemic, one of my saving graces has been grinding my beans from Lone Oak Coffee and taking a few minutes before the day to savor the coffee, get my mind right. Put a little jazz or Frank Sinatra or Louis Armstrong on in the background, it's even better. I've enjoyed all their blends, but among my favorites, the Ethiopian Guji, love the berry flavor, the Mexican Chiapas, and their house blend. Start your day off right with Lone Oak Coffee. Visit loneoakcoffee.com, that's LONEOAK coffee.com. Use promo code COFFEE2020 for a discount. You can thank me later. That's it for this episode. Thanks to David for joining me, and thank you for sticking with the show during the season. Also, as always, thank you to Lone Oak Coffee. Have a Merry Christmas and Happy Holiday, everyone. I hope you're able to find gratitude and blessings during the season, even in a year such as this. Because it is a holiday week, this will be the last podcast for this week. There's a big game Sunday. Talk to you then.